So let me ask you a question, Gen X. Can you afford to buy a home right now? Let's talk about it. What's going on, everybody? It's Graham. Welcome back to the channel for vlog number 2. And today we're going to kind of get into a little bit more details of some stuff that affects us. And I would say, quite honestly, is affecting everybody in the U.S. right now. One of the things in a lot of the comments that I have gotten that from older Gen Zs and Millennials, that our generation, Gen X, has ruined it and made it hard for everybody to buy a home, for them to buy a home, that they'll never be able to buy a home. And I understand. I can't say that it's our fault. How many of you all are buying your own home right now within the last couple of years? Some of us, I'm sure, have been in their same home for 20 years. It's a little bit different. But if you do not own a home now or buying a home right now and you are looking to go into the market to buy one, can you afford one? So I just kind of wanted to highlight some things and take a listen to this and see what you think.
What's the number one indicator of homelessness? Do you guys know what it is? It's not mental health and it's not drugs. It's the lack of ability to afford housing. Number one reason by a long shot. How about you do this? Go to private sector, go to contractors like you and say, we have limited budget. We want to build really nice units for $100,000 a unit and have 15 contractors bid against it and find the least expensive option. They're not even bidding these projects. These are buddies of theirs at the country club, and they're like, hey, if you go do this for 600 grand, you cut me back, I'll bill you as a vendor. So this is what's happening. The money's going straight from the government to the contractor, but the contractor pays invoices, right, to his subcontractors. So these government officials are becoming subcontractors on the jobs. Project manager fee, $100,000. Dude, they're just stealing from you. They're flat out stealing from you. What's the...
So what do you think about that? Makes sense to me. I mean, I for a while, I've been in roughly the same industry for 23 years. 23 years with 2 years out. And those 2 years were spent being a construction superintendent. Was a construction superintendent for a couple years, one with KB Home, and then another, actually probably for about 2 years, with D.R. Horton, which are, if you're not familiar with those in your area of the country, they're basically tract home builders. And when I was with them, things were done a lot differently back then than they are done today. And so it seems like, and I understand what he's talking about when he's talking about, you know, these people, these government contractors saying, we're going to get this money, we're going to, you know, invest it back into the community. We heard that the other day with some economic plans. And you just see when government gets involved in that, you see what happens. But also, you know, it ends up not making its way back, and that's why there's not housing. So, you know, what do you think about that? But I've experienced it being in the construction industry for those 2 to 3 years, and it just seems like it's getting worse. And which brings me into, you know, this next little clip right here, which this is where I kind of sit on the fence the most, or sit on the most to agree with, because being in San Antonio, I see exactly what he's talking about all the time. So take a listen to this.
There's a lot of outrage here in Tennessee because a lot of Californians have moved here. Now, I moved here in January, but I'm originally from New England, which is a market that I also cannot afford to move back to. But the real issue that people should have in our country is not the random person finding their first home they can buy. The real issue is this right here. The corporate-owned housing communities. There are 60 homes going up right there. They're all going to be owned by a corporation, and they're only going to be leased out to people. And those 60 homes are going to turn into 60,000. And I just find it so crazy that we're letting this happen. Owning a home should not be a giant investment for shareholders. It should be something we all have a right to do. And they're changing the American dream and making it so the American dream is not home ownership, but it's renting. And I think that's wrong. And I think that's a much bigger problem.
So, like I said, in San Antonio, that's going on a lot. Specifically, we used to have this Air Force base called Kelly Air Force Base down in the Southwest military area. and there was base housing there. They shut down that base, I don't know, 25 years ago. And so this base housing had been there vacant for all these years, and they've developed that whole thing. There's actually more military people in the what they call city base, Brooks City Base now, than there was when it was an active duty military site, because they have invested and built buildings, and then this corporation that bought that land is leasing to businesses. You know, you've got Boeing down there, you've got music venues now. It's a pretty cool place. But what I've noticed over the last 5 or 6 months is they began to tear all of that base housing down. Didn't fix up any of those, didn't rebuild them, tore it down, and have started building new neighborhoods. The one thing I can say about it is they're not cookie cutter in the sense that every house looks the same. They are townhomes to single family homes to all different sizes, and it looks really nice. However, none of them are for sale. They're all for rent. And I'm talking, there's going to be at least 100 homes in that neighborhood. That's probably on the low side. There's probably going to be more than that. If you think about the area of town too, being from San Antonio or being in San Antonio, it's not a bad side of town. I mean, my father-in-law lives over there, but it's not necessarily the best part of town either. You've got tons of people moving from that area of town, moving to the north side of San Antonio to be, in a different area of town. And there's always this reinvestment back in this side and the south side of town. Again, beautiful neighborhoods, but once again, what organizations own those places? There is a management company that's associated with it, but who's the one that's actually funding it? Who's the one that's actually building those? Again, you'll own nothing, and you'll rent. So I'm pretty sure you have them in your neck of the woods. Drop a comment, let me know if you see the same thing going on in your area. All right, so I want to start highlighting some comments that people leave on the previous videos. So I want to show this one comment, rather long comment, but just bear with me. Let me read it. I got to put on my glasses to see it from where I'm sitting. And of course it'd be on screen for you to see, but this individual says, I was excited when I came across this movement for 2 reasons. Number one, like you, I'm going to be turning 50 soon. I figured it would be a good way to connect with others my age who shared some experiences. The older I get, the harder it is to make friends. And that could be a whole nother video right there. Number 2, I believe our generation had a childhood which enabled us to get along with and respect those we just so happen to share a neighborhood or a town with, because our parents, not us, decided to live there. Exactly. All of us kids often fought with each other, and many times were very different from each other economically, socially, and politically. Maybe our parents were political. I don't recall ever talking about politics as a kid, but nowadays that's different. But I think that's what this commenter means. Yet, the majority of us, even if we grew up and moved away, have fond memories and take some pride in that place, even with all of its flaws. I can agree. On the other hand, the younger generations grew up in neighborhoods online, where they were able to find those who think and act like they do. While in theory that sounds great, it really robbed them of the opportunity to learn how to coexist and work with those who don't. The ability, virtually blind. That ability is vital for our country's divisions and to mend. So that ability is vital for our country's divisions to mend. Bottom line, I propose Gen X has a responsibility to try our best to encourage them to leave the comforts of their cyber tribes and learn to coexist and compromise with others. Absolutely amazing comment. If you agree, let me know in the comments. I mean, that was actually a really well thought out comment. I mean, look, not all of our childhood. I mean, we a lot of these Gen X videos are about how rough our childhood was. But overall, I would say that we had pretty amazing memories. But we do know that not everything was perfect. So we sit back and we realize, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of shit back then that wasn't right. And I think we've corrected that as a society now. But it's gone, past making it level or even to, the polar opposite of where we were at then. So if we were this way in the 80s and that was deemed bad and we've made up for it, but now we're this far on this side, how is that good? So anyway, so it started, thinking about the housing. I reached out and I'd asked my mom, hey mom, I remember because when we moved up to Nebraska for some time, my mom met what turned out to be my future stepdad in Nebraska. And then they eventually married, and then we moved back down to Texas. And so I remember when we moved back down, he had bought 4 acres of property in a small town right outside of Corpus Christi, and then built a home. And I remember it was Jim Walter's home, which was a company that shut down about 10 years ago. Pretty good company, and they actually allowed my mom and stepdad to help and do some of the work themselves to lower the cost. So, of course, as a kid, I didn't know what that cost of that house was. So I reached out to her. She had to think about it a little bit, but she did tell me this. She says, my mom said that in 1986, so we're talking in 1986, that she was making $10 an hour at her job. And if you look here in today's dollars with inflation, that breaks down to $28.72 today. So think about any of you all out there, if you were getting paid, just round it up to $30 an hour. How would that be? $10 an hour today is, if you're getting paid $10 an hour today, are you able to buy a house with that? No. Whether you're a Gen X, a Gen Z, or a millennial, there's just no way in hell that you're going to be able to buy a house that way. So, what do you do, right? So these kids or these young millennials that are saying they can't afford to buy a house, yeah, they can't. But, is every Gen X, just because we're older, just because we've been around, are we all making $30 an hour? I would say most of us aren't. So then that made me think. I remember just in conversation that I remember my mom throwing out there a number of $60,000. I think, hey, he makes $60,000 a year, blah, blah, blah. I'm 8 or 9 years old. I don't know, or how old was I then? That would have been, 12. I was 12 years old. Even then you don't have a concept of what $60,000 a year is. Well, do the same calculator again. $60,000 in 1986 is equivalent to $172,333. Now, in today's money, if you're making 172 grand a year, you're doing well. It doesn't have as much buying power as 172 grand, just say 10 years ago did. But even in today's high inflation economy, 170 grand is really good. And so then I asked her, I said, well, do you remember how much that you bought the house for? And she says, well, I remember we paid $5,000 for the acreage, which is cheap. And we spent $75,000 on that home, where, again, they did a lot of the work, not a lot of the work, but they did some of the painting and stuff like that, interior and exterior, that, they were capable of doing. Now, these figures don't include, digging the well and also a septic tank, because it was out in the country. Probably wouldn't have been that much more money back then compared to how much it costs today. So we just say we're all in for $80,000. Now, $80,000 today will get you a $229,000, say $230,000 home, which, being in San Antonio, that's not too bad. But, what do those $230,000 homes look like? So let's go into a few of those, and I'll show you, at least in San Antonio. I know in other parts of the world, it's probably pretty bad. You're not going to get anything nice. So here's a little map of like Realtor.com in San Antonio, and you can see the little red dots. And I based it on a filtered, $230,000. So the red dots for $230,000 home, the majority of them are where? They're on the south side of San Antonio. And where are all the new more expensive, better school districts, where all those are on the north side of San Antonio. So most people that are going to spend $230,000, $300,000 for a house, they're not going to do it on the south side. They're going to move to the north side. And so that's just the way that it's happening right now in this town. So let's see what we can get. So in other words, you already know with a $230,000 loan, you're not going to end up maybe in the most desirable, area in San Antonio. So you're just going to have to either continue to rent, or you're going to have to buy a house in an area of town that you don't like. All right, so I wanted to go into just to show you, these are current listings on realtor.com. And when you see these houses that are popping up, these are renderings of new construction homes. And because I already know from seeing these all over the place, this is Lennar, which is the home builder. And, $220,000, $230,000 for these cookie cutter homes. Now, it's one thing to see a rendering online. It's another thing to actually drive through the neighborhood and see them. And, when they show a front of the house like that, you might call it a facade, but in the construction industry, they call it an elevation. So they have like an elevation plan B, plan A, plan C, where it's essentially the same house back behind it, but the front is a different facade, or what they call an elevation. So when you see these, you're like, man, those are nice. But when you go through the neighborhood, my ex-wife lives in a similar neighborhood. So when I go to pick up the Rothman, right, I, being 6'4", can almost put my hand on their house and almost touch her neighbor's house in between. They're that close to one another. They got these unsightly electrical boxes, the big green electrical boxes that sit right in the front yard. Almost every other home has them, because they need to be able to fix them in the front yard versus the old days having to go into the backyard to fix them. I get that, but they're ugly, and you're on top of your neighbors. And so the funny thing, and actually her neighborhood's a D.R. Horton neighborhood, which are slightly nicer. But on these Lennars, there's plenty of neighborhoods leading to that are Lennar. So when you see the front, it's one thing. But when you're driving by and you see the backs of the houses, it's so ugly. And what I mean by that, now I deal with military as part of my job. I'm a military contractor. So when I drive through those neighborhoods, the backs of the houses as they're facing the road look like the back ends of barracks. Like they are just one big long rectangle. Pretty facade like that, a pretty elevation in the front, and then just a straight rectangle all the way back with a window and a door. No porch, no nothing like that in the back. And once again, just stacked on top of one another. You even go to the part of her neighborhood, because they have like a class system. You have, you can only afford this, and then, this. There's homes there that are $450,000, and they literally have no backyards. I do not understand that. If you have the money to spend on a home like that, that you would build yourself on top of one another, and then also allow yourself no backyard to have fun. But to a beginner, that might not be too bad. So if you wind up going, and I found this house here, $230,000 house. It's actually a nice house. It's an older home. It's more towards central San Antonio, so it's not too bad. But you will have some ghetto areas that surround it. But that's a $230,000 home. I believe the math on this, if you're going to do a conventional loan, $20,000 down, you're looking at 20% down, you're looking at over $40,000 down. And then you're not even including the closing costs on there, and you'd be at $1,900 a month. So in theory, that sounds good. Hey, $1,900 a month. Most people will do FHA loan, which is, you can go as low as 3.5% down. So it knocks it down to a lot less money, but you're still looking at $18,000 to $20,000 that you're going to have to slap down to get into this home. The other interesting thing about San Antonio is the electric company, which is CPS. They're owned by the city, or at least they're run by the city. When you pay your bill, you're paying the city of San Antonio. So they have control over it. And the price per kilowatt hour is, It's insane. You don't have co-ops in San Antonio where you get to choose who your electric company is. You have to buy their electricity. So let's just say you get into this at 2,100 and you're a 26, 28-year-old couple. You're married. Say you're both making $60,000 a year. So you're at $120,000 a year combined because you can't afford the house unless you have dual incomes. They're at $2,100 a month. You're still going to be spending $500, $600, $700 a month when you have 110-degree days on electricity. You're going to have water. So all in, you're still right at $3,000 or a little over $3,000 a month just to have a home, to buy a home. So I ask you, is it even worth it at that point in time? So I'm going to click this video clip here of my man Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And let him explain to you kind of what I've touched base on already.
Or the average home in our country 2 years ago was $215,000. Today it's $400,000. So kids today, like your kids and my kids, are never going to buy a home. There's three big companies, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. These are the biggest companies. Those three companies own 88% of the S&P 500. Wow. So they basically just own everything. And now what they've decided is they want to own every single family home in our country. As Klaus Schwab says, famously, he says, under the Great Reset, you will own nothing, but you will be happy. They pay nothing for money. Their credit is so impeccable.
Oh, I see. They have like a 900.
Yeah. Oh. So they got the better than the best credit rating.
But isn't that like privatized communism or something? That's what it feels like.
Well, yeah, it's like socialism for the rich, and this barbaric, merciless, ruthless, savage capitalism for the poor. The average home.
So, I don't agree with everything that he stands for. However, he is dead on when it comes to, that statement. He names the three different ones that are doing this. And so it's happening all over America right now. The comment there by, Klaus Schwab, he did say that, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And so they're basically buying up all of the housing and making us a country of renters. And I mean, that's one thing that America prides itself on, the American dream. So we're almost done. I want to throw up another comment from the last video. This one's funny. So, we're gonna start getting away from the seriousness, and we're gonna always try to end it with a laugh or two. This comment from Marv Roberts: our war with Gen Z began with Legos left on the floor at 2 a.m. It has now evolved into them holding our grandbabies as ransom for gas money. LOL. I don't have any grandkids yet, but I have stepped on Legos before, or my oldest used to use, Bionicles, which were a cool little thing that Lego did. And, I stepped on those things all the time. And if you've never stepped on a Lego, lucky you, because they hurt like hell. So, and then we'll end it with something even funnier. I'm going to go ahead and leave this up on the screen first so you can actually take some time to read it, because it's just a quick little clip. So we're talking about the housing market, right? So here's what you do, right? You don't have money for a home. You don't have money for the down payment. So, as it says here, when you meet the cougar in Vegas that is willing to put the down payment on your new home. Absolutely hilarious. Check this out. Did you catch that? I'll play it again. Absolutely hilarious. This guy's is a realtor on Instagram, and he's normally a little bit more serious and professional about it. This is an absolutely hilarious thing. So here, that's what you do, guys. Any of you Gen Xers, if you're millennials or Gen Z, what you do is go to Vegas and meet yourself a sugar mama, a cougar, and she'll help you out with that down payment. So with that said, guys, it's going to be closed to the video. And if you liked it, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and hit that bell so you can be notified of future videos. Again, Gen Z vlog every Wednesday. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.